I'm Alex. I'm halfway through my first ever time at the London Film Festival, and this is The Film Angle. Something a little bit different this week. No Chris, unfortunately, just myself reporting from London. A quick lowdown if you're new here. I am at the London Film Festival with a press pass for the first time. In our previous episode, we went in depth about this with Gavin Spores previewing the festival, and he gave me the lowdown on how to make the most of my time in London. And here I am, putting it into practice. So, yeah. Originally, I had planned to do some kind of video vlog style content, but I scrapped it. Sorry to anybody who wanted to see my face, but I'm not as comfortable on camera as I am on microphone, and it really put into perspective after trying a couple of videos just how much of a skill that is. I admire anybody who can just whip out a camera in public and start chatting away with confidence and a lack of anxiety. It is a skill. It is a skill. And there's a couple of bad attempts on my phone, which you'll never, ever see. But hopefully by doing it this way, you'll get a much more digestible and hopefully enjoyable piece of entertainment, whereas I think the video form may not have been as well polished and might have just been a little bit awkward to watch, really. Not gonna lie. Anyway, enough about my failed attempts at trying to make a vlog style piece of content, but now the audio style piece of content. I'm just going to go into a little bit about my first 4-ish days at the London Film Festival and just kind of give you a lowdown of what I've done so far and what I've seen, what I've been up to. I won't go too in depth about things because, I want to go more in depth with Chris, and I think it would be better to bounce off of each other. But, I'm here for a reason, and that is to watch these films and let you know what's good and what isn't. So, but also give you an idea of what this whole experience is like. On to my first 4-ish days at the London Film Festival. So I arrived in London on Friday, the 11th of October, and that was actually with my real job. Something a lot of us have to contend with in this space is the fact that the day job is usually something entirely different to the film job, which is, at this point still a hobby. But I don't mind. I've gone up to London. Here I am. I did request some tickets for the Friday evening, but you're not always successful in this, and unfortunately I wasn't successful. But I was seeing lots of stuff on Twitter of people going to the festival, and so many people getting excited for the Anora Gala screening. Anora's Sean Baker's new film with Mikey Madison. And I was like, screw it. I finished my day at work, and I'm going to head to the South Bank and join the rush queue for the Anora Gala. And even if I'm unsuccessful, I'm going to get my bearings a little bit. So headed down to the South Bank and joined that queue. My FOMO got the better of me there. And I hit the queue, and I was quite far back, and I would say we were like an hour away from the film starting, and I thought there is no way, because I have no idea how many kind of tickets they release, how many get cancelled, how many, guests don't turn up, usually is what the rush queue tickets are for. So I didn't really know, and I was in two minds. I was like, do I stay? Do I go? So I just kind of created a conversation with the guy in front of me and just said, like, have you done this before? And if you have, what do you think? Are we getting in? Or are we not? Thankfully, he had done this before, and he was like, I'm pretty optimistic about where we are. And he mentioned the fact that he had done this for several other films at prior London film festivals, and he said he's only not been able to get into one, and he was a lot further back in the queue. Okay, so great. And I'm really thankful he told me that because I think I would have left had I not. So yeah, I was optimistic, and it paid off because yeah, an hour later of queuing, and I was in. I was into the Honora Gala, and this is the quote unquote UK premiere of this film, which won the big prize at Cannes and is being kind of lauded for potential Oscars next year. So yeah, I was in, and not only was I in, I had pretty like amazing seats in the rear stalls, and to get into the Royal Festival Hall, which is where the film was playing, you kind of walk a bit of a red carpet to get in, and it kind of hit me there. I had like I was feeling the feels, as they say. It was the biggest film of the festival, I think, and I was exhausted. I'd been up since 5:30 a.m. and obviously extremely excited to go to the London Film Festival. So it all just kind of hit me there. I was feeling quite emotional, kind of walking into the screening and sitting down, and the lights dimming, and that kind of thunderous applause for director Sean Baker, somebody whose filmography I have admired for a while now. And yeah, him and Mikey Madison walk out. They introduce the film, and yeah, I mean, Honora it's like a part rom com, part thriller. It's like an adult morality tale following a sex worker called Honora, or Annie. She prefers to be called that. And she winds up getting romantically involved with a guy called Vanya, who's this like very immature, very spoiled son of a Russian oligarch. And this film is hilarious, like super laugh out loud funny, which took me a minute because like obviously Sean Baker's films do have humor in them, but they're not usually full blown comedies. And this was like the amount of laughs it was getting was like a full blown comedy. It's an absolutely wild ride, and once I settled into that, I was having so much fun with it. Yeah, it deserves all the hype it's getting. Like, think of the tension of something like Uncut Gems, and but it just yeah, that kind of fast paced, tense, energetic stuff going on, mixed with some really really funny laughs. Um, it's an absolute crowd pleaser of a film, and yeah, quite a high bar to start my journey. I've and ahed a little bit about the ending, which it's not long out until it's out in the UK, so you'll all get to have a sense of what I'm umming and ahhing about when you go watch it. I think the ending might divide a few people. Yeah, I remember listening to a couple of people on the bus on the way home, and they were divided on this ending as well, which obviously I'm not going to go into, but yeah, just one of my little kind of like I'm thinking about that kind of things. So yeah, I do highly recommend rushing out to the cinema as soon as this hits the UK cinemas, which I'm pretty sure is like early next month, so not long to wait for Honora. It is really a special film. um I didn't get back till 1 a.m. that night, which is probably not the best way to start the festival. Uh, Already kind of exhausted, but I would not swap that experience for the world. Like, it was such a special screening, like the emotions of it all, the queuing, the red carpet, everything. Just like what an incredible kind of time to go to the cinema for myself. Like, quite the experience. So yeah, loved it. And then, yeah, I guess the next day is when I properly started doing a full day at the festival. I went to a talk between, it was like a free LFF talk, and it was between Peter Bradshaw, Ella Kemp, and Layla Latif. They all kind of represent different forms of the life of the film critic, like your kind of traditional newspaper column, your writer for hire, and then like the online tied to a kind of social media company, but a good one because it's Letterboxd, and we all love Letterboxd, and I'm chronically attached to Letterboxd. And that talk was great. All three speakers gave us insights into the industry, which they were very open about, and their own fears. I believe it was Ella Kemp who kind of touched on this idea of like paranoia and this idea of, like, why should anybody listen to me? Which is, something I struggle with, even right now whilst I'm recording this. Like, why does anybody care? But it's to kind of persevere in the face of that. Yeah, they're very, very open and honest about these things. They touched on the future of film criticism and even touched a little bit on AI and, how that is going to change things and their fears surrounding that. It is the kind of topic of the moment. And yeah, all in all, it was a great talk. While I was waiting for the talk to begin, I actually sparked up a conversation with a lady named Janet Suleiman. This was great. I think there's something about kind of chatting to people at the London Film Festival. You're all there to see films, so like the easiest question to ask is, what films have you seen, and have you enjoyed your time at the festival so far? What should I watch? What have you watched? What did you like? This? Did you like that? And it was great to talk to Janet, and I think we had like 5-10 minutes before the start of the talk, and then after the talk, I kind of plucked up the courage to say, "Look, this is something I'd wanted to do. I don't know if I mentioned it on the last episode, but I wanted to get little like vox pops, little kind of chats with people about the festival so far. Now, I'm not going to lie. I'm not the most confident person in the world, and I haven't got loads of these recordings, but I was able to get one with Janet, and I do have another one later in the episode as well. So I was able to have a little chat with Janet, recorded for the podcast about our experience at the festival so far. So please take a listen to that, because it just so happens that Janet is a film critic as well. She has a Instagram page called The Amateur's Take, and she has a Substack as well where she does all her reviews and her criticisms. And yeah, she's a fantastic writer. So yeah, great to bump into somebody who is also kind of on this path of kind of figuring out their place within the world of film criticism. Obviously for Janet a lot more in the written form, but it was great to chat to her even briefly for the podcast. So I hope you enjoy just a little something of that. So I'm here with Janet Suleiman at the London Film Festival. You are a film critic yourself, and we've just come out of a talk about film criticism. But first of all, I guess, did you enjoy the talk?
Yeah, absolutely. I think as someone that's a budding film critic, it's quite welcoming and helps me feel a sense of belonging in a room of established critics that have awareness of people that don't have the tools or the accessibility to make it their full-time job yet. So it's nice that there's hope in that way.
Absolutely. I also found it quite interesting, the idea that even people like Peter Bradshaw have that kind of paranoia, or even Ella Kemp, having that paranoia of wondering why should you listen to me, which is something I struggle with as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I thought that was a really interesting talk. I was going to ask you just quickly, what have been your highlights of the festival so far? You've only done one full day so far?
Yeah, so, a full day.
Packed a lot in, right?
Yeah, back to back. But I think the highlight has been the enthusiasm of everyone crammed into that room, and how, as much as you are in a room full of strangers, everyone comes here with the same level of excitement you do to see something that not many people have had a chance to see yet. And the wealth gap in that room is crazy, the class gap in that room is crazy. Everyone, no matter who they are, is excited to see a film.
Absolutely.
And as cliche as that might be, I think that's why it makes me so happy to come here. But yeah.
That's great. And what films did you watch yesterday?
I saw Conclave, Blitz, Emilia Perez, and Anora.
Oh wow, you packed a lot in.
I really did.
What was your favourite out of those?
Maybe because it ended on a high, but it had to be Anora.
Yeah,
100%.
I saw that one last night, and fantastic.
Yeah.
And then coming up for the rest of your film festival time, is there a film that you're particularly looking forward to from the festival?
I think my teenage self is exceptionally excited for We Live in Time.
Yeah.
But I am so excited for Queer and the journey it's going to take me on.
Yes. Are you a Luca Guadagnino fan?
I am.
Yeah.
But I'm more of a Daniel Craig fan.
More of a Daniel Craig, yeah.
To see him do this and take this project on, I think has polarised some people's opinions online, and I'm excited to see what the reaction is in that room when we watch that film together.
Yeah, well, he's taken quite a crazy path since playing Bond, which is great to see. As just really forcing himself into interesting performances. So yeah, I'm massively excited for Queer, and also my highlight, or not highlight yet, but I'm hoping it'll be my highlight. But the film that I'm most looking forward to has been that one. So yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
But thank you very much.
No worries,
Thanks for doing that.
I appreciate that Janet took time to, spend 5 minutes with me on the recording there, and I particularly appreciate it because afterwards, from waiting around for a minute, we're actually able to meet Ella Kemp from Letterboxd, as well as Mia Vicino, who's the kind of West Coast editor on Letterboxd as well, and chat to them for a minute. So that was great. I was actually able to hand them a Film Angle business card. So proud of that one. I then headed over to the Picture House Central, which is in Soho, for the press screening of Sebastian, which just so happened to be my first ever press screening, and I'd used all my kind of confidence that day. So I must say, with the busyness of London on a Saturday, which is rather overwhelming in itself. The highs of the night before and of the morning. I was a little bit of an anxious wreck when I arrived at the cinema, and everybody was already kind of mingling in their groups, having, probably been there multiple days prior and definitely there for some of the really, really early screenings. So yeah, and I must say I was keeping an eye out for Gavin. Would have been nice to see him in the flesh, but I don't think he was there that day, or at least I didn't bump into him. But yeah, I'll go through some of the films that I saw, and again, I just want to reiterate that I will go through all of this with Chris. So this is just very kind of brief thoughts on these as of right now. So yeah, Sebastian. My first press screening is a British film about a guy named Max, who is desperately trying to get a novel published, and he is one of those writers who writes from reality, writes about what he knows. And what he knows is at this very moment is sex work, but only because he is actively trying to write a book about sex work. So the film, it explores the line between reality and art, and how much of ourselves we're willing to reveal, and how far we're willing to go to attain that inspiration, and when do things, the lines start to get crossed, and when do things start to get a bit blurry. And I must say, I overall really enjoyed this film. I was definitely on board with it the whole time. Having come out of it, I start to think a little bit back, and I wonder if there are certain elements which, I would have liked to dive deeper into Max's character, and maybe certain elements are just, were a little bit paper thin in terms of theme. But, that's my first press screening. I must say, I did still really enjoy that film. And then I headed over to what was the public screening, which was at the Prince Charles Cinema. So it was a public screening of Bionico's Bachata, which is a film from the Dominican Republic. It is a lean, mean 80 minutes, a drug-fueled mockumentary that casts an unjudgmental eye on its characters who are suffering from addictions, from a whole different bunch of narcotics. But our main character, Bionico, is also suffering, I guess, from the drug of love. And it's absolutely bizarre. There was quite a few walkouts with this one, but the audience was a mix of ages, and I must say I think it was a lot of the older audience that ended up leaving, and then I think the majority of the audience absolutely lapped it up. I think when the director came on stage at the end for a Q&A, I think people were eager to ask him questions about the process. In terms of camera work, it's amazing. Editing, just, it's completely unique, and I think, it had been a long day, so maybe I'm maybe I wasn't on board with it all the time, but there was this idea that the portrayal of addiction is sometimes used as like a really fun concept, and maybe too fun, maybe too glamorous at times. And the film does try to condemn, or at least, um, it isn't. Its final message is not to glorify the drugs, but it also does a lot of glorifying the drugs at the same time. I don't know if it walks the balance completely well. I must say though, it's not quite like a film I've ever seen before. So it's got that going for it. But yeah, that ended my first day at the London Film Festival, or first full day at least. Which I guess leads me on to day 2, which would have been the Sunday, and this is, I guess this is where the work fully kind of started, and instead of like heading over to a talk in the morning or anything like that, I was up over at the Picture House for 8 a.m. practically to start what would be a 3-film day, and I started with On Falling, and similar to Sebastian, we mentioned this on the podcast last week, and it is about a Portuguese immigrant working in what is essentially an Amazon warehouse in Scotland. And it is probably the most damning portrayal of modern day working environments and how they just completely isolate a person and just punch them down until they feel less than human. They're in the eyes of the corporate overlords, they are just a number. And I mean, I was completely kind of taken away with this film. I think it's one of those films that needs to be seen in the cinema, because I think because it's quite slow and there's a lot of repetitiveness to it. I wonder if my attention span would have been as good at home. But this film really wants you to get into the mind of the person that you're following, and I'm sure I'll talk about it more later, but just trigger warning to anyone who has ever worked with one of those warehouse scanner guns. This one is going to act like a horror film to you. My next film was Four Mothers, which was like almost like a completely different turn. It was like one of those very heartwarming, I'm going to say British films, despite the fact that the film is Irish. So I don't want to take that away from it, but I think people would understand if I said there was like a heartwarming British comedy. You would know what I was talking about. Now, obviously, this isn't a British film. It's an Irish film, and it is about a man who's trying to release or he has given the opportunity to go on an American press tour for his first ever novel. But he's also looking after his mother, who has recently had a stroke, and is also, quite elderly as well. He has 3 friends who are quite close, who all have kind of different complications with their own elderly mothers, and they decide to kind of dump them on Edward, our main character, to go off on a like impromptu pride holiday. So therefore, Edward then has to kind of care for not just his own mum, but his friends' 3 other mothers as well, and then also have to deal with the fact that his book is coming out, and the press tour is looming, and his publishers want him to go. Like I said, like this is just like a really, really sweet film. Didn't know much about it going in, and it just kind of it's just like a lovely cup of tea. Like I just had a really nice time watching this film. It's not too long. I think it's like a pretty much dead on an hour and a half, and just really, really lovely. I can't really say much more about it. I laughed, I teared up a little bit. All those kind of things that you expect from this kind of film going in. It satisfies on all those levels. After I came out of that film, I actually bumped into Gavin, which was great. And we found out that we were both heading into the Seed of the Sacred Fig, and it was great to kind of like bump into Gavin there, and then actually be able to go sit next to this guy I've only known virtually for a brief time, and obviously jumped on the podcast. But yeah, we were able to go and actually go watch a film together, which was just kind of this mad kind of thing of like, I found you on TikTok, I invited you onto the podcast, and here I am sitting in Picture House, Soho, Screen One, about to watch this Iranian film. Seed of the Sacred Pig. Okay. This potentially is the film of the festival for me. It is like I mentioned, an Iranian film from director Mohammad Rasulov, and he was actually he had to be smuggled out of Iran for this film. This film would not have been seen had he not left his home country. And it follows a family who are kind of caught up in the middle of the political protests that happened a couple years ago, and the film was actually filmed in secret during these kind of protests, and uses actually a lot of real footage from those protests to pretty striking results. The family dynamic is, the father is an investigative judge in the Revolutionary Court of Tehran. And he kind of has to keep his job secret from many people around him because, there's a lot of hatred and vitriol towards his kind of role. The mother is probably the most complex character I've seen on film in a long time, and so incredibly written. The family have all got these different perspectives around the protests, and that's all shaped by their kind of generational experiences. And the mother's is the most interesting. She's the oldest of the three women in the film. Obviously, she gave birth to the other two, but years and years of kind of religious and societal, oppression and tradition, I guess, has kind of shaped her views on different things. And, they all have to kind of navigate this kind of very tumultuous time in Iran together. And then tensions rise even further when the father's gun goes missing, and he blames his daughters and goes to really extreme lengths to kind of find out the truth about where his gun has gone, because he will get in a lot of trouble, essentially, for the fact that it has gone missing. And the film is just incredibly powerful. I was tearing up throughout a lot of it. It's got really unique focal points. And like I said, like, these characters are so well written. They're so complex. And the politics within this family unit and the way it plays out within, the dining room setting, essentially, is just like incredible. It's 2 hours and 50 minutes. Honestly, it flies by. It's a really accessible film. It's just like, it's almost like a novel. It's just so big, but also so small at the same time. I'm probably rambling a bit. I'm a little bit tired. I won't lie. The ending seems to have divided many people. It does take a bit of a turn. I'm going to say it takes a bit of a Hitchcockian turn. Other people haven't not so much enjoyed the kind of cat and mouse, final act. I won't say more than that, but it is a bit of a turn for the film. But I was too invested to not care about these characters and their struggles and their complexities. I was just absolutely floored by this film. I don't know when it comes out in the UK. I don't know who's releasing it. Maybe I'll try and find out before I talk to Chris about it. But this film needs to be seen by everyone. It is so good. I can't even, I can't put into words just how good this film is, which is bad because that is my job right now. I should be putting that into words. I really hope this gets a wide release. Honestly, I was absolutely floored by this film, and it helps that the Picture House screen, Screen One, is huge. And oh man, this film looked great on the big screen. Just like, I was, just swept away with this one. Really, really special. I thought it was an interesting premise going in, and obviously the context behind, the film itself and the director, it just really solidifies that kind of importance of cinema and its ability not just to entertain you, but to also act as this kind of historical political rebellion. I absolutely loved it. And after coming out of the screening, I actually spoke to Gavin, and I recorded a little bit of that. So feel free to now listen to me talk to Gavin briefly about his time at the festival and his highlights and what he's looking forward to coming up.
Okay, brilliant. I'm here with Gavin. Gavin Spores. He doesn't really need an introduction. He's been on the podcast already, but now we have met in the flesh. We've just come out of a screening of what was it called?
The Seed of the Sacred Fig.
I shouldn't really forget, because for me it might be the highlight of the festival so far. Wow. Potentially. But it's a long film, so I'm tired. But Gavin, how has your festival experience been so far?
It's been really good so far, and what's been nice, particularly with this year, is there's no big auteurs or big releases like last year. So it's very much been all about the smaller hidden gems, and a lot of them, particularly with films that I have no idea about synopsis or done any research going in, and they've been the best ones so far. And there's usually always a 1-star dud. Haven't found any so far. It's been really good so far, actually. Been really surprised. It's been great.
I'm glad to hear it. And did you get to see Selena Gomez?
I did. I was walking the red carpet as she was on the other side. So I was about 10 feet away from her. My partner lost their mind.
Very happy.
Seeing Selena in the flesh. But talk about Mila Perez. Selena's really good in it. Really good. The whole cast is superb in that film. But yeah, it's always nice when you walk down the red carpet and you kind of take in the glitz and glamour for those 2 minutes you walk down into the festival hall.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to doing it again for the surprise film on Wednesday. Thursday? No, Wednesday. Yeah. Losing my bearings here. But for you, Gavin, what has been the highlight so far? We've still got, a little while to go, but early days, what's the best film so far?
Early days, but still I'm 15 films in. Mm-hmm. And number one for me has to be Nickel Boys.
Excellent.
Just phenomenal piece of work. And for me, one of the best of the year. I still generally often think about it, and particular scenes that really hit me and really resonated with me. Annoyingly, that was at the pre-festival screenings beforehand, so not many people have actually managed to see it, even press. So I really hope when it gets wider release, or there'll be further press screenings, because it really does deserve to be seen. It's a special film.
Yeah, it's kind of like come out of nowhere, hasn't it? And then it's already a bit of an Oscar contender, potentially. I've heard people talking about how unique it is.
Yeah, I will. The whole POV is very unique, but the story really is as well. And I just hope it gets the marketing push, it gets some proper awards campaigns, because it deserves it. And it's not going to get anywhere unless there's eyeballs on it and there's conversations around it, which it absolutely deserves. So,
and then, I think I'm seeing it tomorrow night. That's so I'll let you know. I'll let everybody know if I feel the same way. So obviously, are you here for another week at least, right?
I've got a few more days here. Yeah.
What are you still looking forward to, other than we know Queer is tomorrow? We know how excited you are, and also myself. I'm so insanely excited for that film. So what else? What else are you looking forward to?
Honestly, I find the closing film being Piece by Piece, I'm ready for it. I'm excited. So there's no other real big hitters for me outside of Queer coming up. I'm very intrigued to see Piece by Piece and joining you with a surprise film.
Absolutely.
And I think we're in for a treat wherever we end up getting, and just the actual surprise of it, I think it's going to be a big one this year. It's very unpredictable, so yeah.
I can't wait. Well, thank you, Gavin, and good to properly meet you.
And you.
As well.
Enjoy the rest
and
of the best.
Hopefully I'll bump into you a few more times before the end. Thanks for that.
Always great to speak to Gavin there, and do you know what? It was great seeing him in person, and I hope this is the start of potentially a relationship with the podcast. Maybe we'll get Gavin on again sometime in the future. That would be great. And if not, maybe we'll bump into him next year, because there's no doubt, halfway through this experience, I'd love to do this again next year with Chris. In fact, I think it would be even better with Chris. As much as I've enjoyed it, there have definitely been times where I'm just like, oh man, how good would this be with Chris right now? It'd be better to kind of bounce off of somebody after coming out of these screenings. And I'm not gonna lie, there have been times when I've come out of a screening and I've not force myself into a circle of people in the same position, like I get a little nervous sometimes, and my anxiety just riddles me. But yeah, so I imagine having a little bit of a support there with obviously our great co-host Chris would be the way to forward. Anyway, I'm rambling now. That was my first day of 3 films, and then moving onto the Monday was my first day, I think my last day of a 4-film day. And let me just say, 4 films is a lot. It's a lot. And obviously, having packed my weekend in, I was pretty knackered. And that Sunday with On Falling, Four Mothers, and Seed of the Sacred Fig, that was probably just like an insane day of just like really, really good films. So then slightly more mixed day on the Monday, all over the place. We'll start with Bring Them Down. It is another Irish film from director Christopher Andrews, and it actually stars Christopher Abbott and Barry Keoghan. Barry Keoghan, oh man, he's so good. He makes any kind of character, no matter how flawed they are, still likable somehow. He's a very, very talented guy. Maybe I'm buzzing a little bit because there's 2 films with him in this festival that I got to see. So, Bring Them Down. Yeah, it's about 2 farming families that kind of have a conflict and a rivalry with each other, and it escalates into kind of really devastating, gruesome, horrible ways with just terrible consequences. And it's good. I don't think I was like blown away by it, or I don't think I was, I didn't come out of it feeling anything particularly like super special or anything. But it's it's another kind of on the shorter side, just over an hour and a half. Tells a tale of pretty kind of gruesome, brutal, essentially a bit of almost like a crime family story. So yeah, just fine, I guess. Good to fine. Yeah, fine, I guess. Like, good to fine, maybe. That was Bring Them Down. I don't really know what more to say about that one for now. I think it's coming out on Mubi, probably not too far away. So maybe Chris and I will be able to speak about it soon. And then the second film that I went to see, which was the one I was super duper pumped for, was Luca Guadagnino's Queer, and we've chatted about it on the previous episode for the preview, and obviously we've chatted about Luca Guadagnino many a time on the podcast because I'm a massive fan of all his work. Call Me by Your Name, Suspiria, Bones and All, and obviously this year's challenges. So it's safe to say I was very excited for Queer, and maybe the excitement got the better of me, because sometimes when a film starts and you've got all this kind of built up hype for it, you kind of have to remember that it is just a film. And Queer, I must say, I don't want to say I was disappointed, but maybe I was a little bit. It's very different to anything Luca Guadagnino has done before. It's a lot more kind of, I'm going to say maybe ethereal, maybe non-linear. And maybe this is the problem. I found Queer to be a little bit all over the place, very unfocused, and it probably doesn't help that we didn't really know much going in. We know that it was based on the book, so we can go off of that, but there's no trailer or anything for it yet. So all we know is that Daniel Craig is playing William Lee, and is completely changed within this performance. He is, Daniel Craig is great. There's no doubt. Daniel Craig is great, but the film itself, follows him. He's a writer. He wanders around clubs looking for, connections with other men, and he becomes kind of infatuated with the character Eugene, who's played by Drew Starkey, who again is really good. But I would say at least the first two acts of this film just kind of like are here and there, and now we have a scene here, and now we have a scene there, and this is happening, and I really struggled to like settle within its rhythm. And I heard a lot of people coming out, the third act has divided people like many third acts do, but for me, the third act was just like, oh, this is more focused than anything else in the film, and this is where I started to kind of settle with it. Like, I know what you're trying to do here. So it wasn't until the end of the film that I started to enjoy it a little bit more, but by that point, I guess it's almost a little too late. So, not Challenger's level of love for this film, unfortunately. A little bit mixed, if I'm not going to lie. Again, I don't want to say disappointed, because, you know, it looks great, it sounds great, performances are incredible. It just meanders a little bit, and it wasn't for me. So that's a shame, but there you go. I'm still going to be super excited for anything that Luca Guadagnino does next, and potentially it just needs a second watch. Who knows? I'm not writing it off completely, that's for sure. And then after Queer, I had to head over to the Raw Festival Hall for Amelia Perez, which is the Trans Cartel musical from Jacques Audard. I think that's how you pronounce his name. You know, this is coming out on Netflix, I think, next month. We have Carla Sofia Gascon, who plays the lead character alongside Zoe Saldana. So yeah, Carla plays Amelia and Zoe Saldana plays Rita. And Amelia is a trans cartel boss, or ex-cartel boss. You know, as you get further into the film, you'll understand. I'm not going to spoil anything here. Selena Gomez is in this. She plays the wife of the cartel boss. And then, it's a musical. It's a crime film. It's I'm not gonna lie. It's a little like all over the place, but it's also not. But it's also like not super deep either. Like it's quite light. It's lighter than I thought, despite some of the heavier subjects. And I don't think it hits any of them with any kind of subtlety. But I don't know. I was on board with it. I was really enjoying it. And there's some really sweet moments here. I was enjoying this. I want to speak to Chris about this. He's a musical fan. I'm intrigued to see what he thinks, because I think maybe it might not go musical enough for him, or the music numbers might not be good enough for somebody who enjoys a full-blown musical. But then, you know, I think the filmmaking is pretty good here. I was intrigued. I liked it. I think it's produced quite a mixed response so far. I'm on the side of the fence of I liked it. And then I had a few hours to kill before the final film of the night, and I only bought tickets for this film because everybody was going on about it so much, and that was Nickel Boys. And there was part of me, because after those three films in the days before, I was thinking maybe I'm too tired for this. And, you know, like you start to waver a little bit. I was wondering, like, you know, when's the UK release date? Could I sell my tickets maybe? No. Everybody loves this film. Okay, you got to do it. So I went back to the Airbnb, grabbed myself a coffee, had a steam bun from the local Asian supermarket, and you know, I woke up a little bit. Let's just say I woke up a little bit. Headed back over to the Royal Festival Hall, and sat down ready for the film. And you know, as with many of these kind of gala screenings, of which this was one of them, the director Ramel Ross came out on stage, and the stars as well. Ethan, I'm going to pronounce these awfully again. Ethan Heresy, Brandon Wilson, and then Anjanae Ellis Taylor, who I imagine we all know. Were all there, the producer and I believe the writer as well, you know, doing this intro. Intros are a bit weird, especially for films that you don't know much about, or especially like the filmmakers probably don't want you to know much about before watching it. So it was kind of an interesting intro in terms of like they, you know, filmmakers were quite guarded because they didn't want to reveal too much about the process because they just want you to experience it. And this film is something to experience. I mean, it's based on a book, which I did buy afterwards, so that might tell you something already. It chronicles the powerful friendship between two young black teenagers who kind of like navigate this. They end up going to a reform school in Florida. And let's just say it's not a great place at all. The film is actually shot from a point of view perspective for pretty much the whole film. The director is very creative with this. It's not boring, and it's not a gimmick either, because it could easily be. But he gets quite creative with how it's used, and it's used so brilliantly. I believe Ramel Ross has only done like a documentary film before this. Like, this is his first kind of feature fiction film, and oh my goodness. Though I will say this before I start to rave about it. First 30 minutes, I thought, oh dear, maybe this isn't worth the late night and the amount and how tired I am right now. Maybe this isn't, because it was a little bit like scattershot. And I think it's one of those films where maybe it might be good to know a little bit more going in, because I didn't know much going in. And I feel like this might be better if you have a better sense of, what lies ahead. Not the whole thing, obviously, but what lies ahead might help. So I felt like I was playing catch up a little bit at the start. I'm trying to figure out what this film is. I didn't know that it was going to, majority of the film is going to end up in this reform school or anything like that. But what follows is just like the most powerful, creative, harrowing story that is just, incredible. Like, I'm gonna keep saying powerful. It's just powerful. I was just left kind of stunned by the end of it. It is fantastic, and unlike anything you've seen. I'm sure we've seen POV films before, but never like this, and never so creative and so confident with the camera and what you're watching and what's on screen. Some of the most insanely beautiful cinematography you've ever seen. It just plays around with everything so well. I can't get over it, honestly. This actually, I was gonna say like this and Anora, like interchangeable in some kind of ranked list that maybe I'm doing. But now I'm thinking about it. Now I'm talking about like, this is up there with Seed of the Sacred Fig. Like, maybe these two are the films of the festival. I thought for a minute it might have been Sacred Fig and Nora, but now I'm thinking maybe it's Nickel Boys and Sacred Fig. Oh man, the more I think about it, the better. I bought the book. I went to one of the local Waterstones and was just like, I want to know more. I need to know what this book is, because also many people are saying it's like a perfect adaptation. So now I need to read the book, and then I want to watch the film again. Potentially, this will have Oscar buzz all over it, and it deserves it. I hadn't heard of this film before the festival, but I hope I can now spread the word. You're going to want to see this. It is just one of the most interesting, creative, and most powerful films you're going to see this year. And it kind of came out of nowhere for me. So very happy to have seen it at the gala screening. And then I guess that concludes my 4 days, 4 days ish of films, and and that 4 films on that final day did nearly kill me. But it was quite the experience. I think, I'm not sure I'm a 4 day, I'm not sure I'm a 4 film a day guy. I think 3 is quite a lot still, and 2 is probably the sweet spot. But you want to fit in as much as you can. Obviously, I had a day after that of doing the real job again, and then I'm actually recording this now after. I guess I'm on my 5th or 6th day. What am I on the Wednesday? I'm actually currently waiting. Well, I say waiting. I'm just relaxing a little bit before the surprise film later. I've seen 2 other films, but I thought, let's get those first initial days out of the way, and then, I can catch up with Chris and maybe talk about the second half of the festival a little bit more with him, and also look back a little bit more in depth at some of these films that I've seen. Let's leave it there. Let's leave it there for now. I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope that me just talking solo is okay. It might not be. This is something a little different and something a little bit out of my comfort zone as well. It's usually better to have somebody to bounce off of, like Chris. Maybe nobody's got to this bit, and I'm just speaking to myself. But you have gotten to this bit. Thank you for listening, and I hope you've enjoyed listening to me go on about the experience. And don't worry, you'll hear more, or maybe be worried. Who knows? Maybe you haven't liked this, but I think next time I'll be with Chris. No more solo podcasts for a minute, unless there's an absolute right. Maybe everybody loves us, and maybe they want me to do it again. I doubt it, but that's been my experience so far at the London Film Festival, and there's a little bit there for you, and some of the films you should be adding to your watch list. So yeah, it's been great so far. So thank you for listening.